Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Midwest Racks and Rods Outdoor Show. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Piscabing, and to my left here is
Chris DeBelli. Welcome.
So this is our second episode. We want to thank you guys for checking us out. We appreciate all the feedback and comments, questions, things you guys had for us in our last episode with our teammate Elijah. And we encourage you to continue that. This is a pre-recorded show, and it's only simply because we have Deer Fest this weekend.
We do. We should be there tonight. We're doing this on Friday night. So we're sort of playing hooky, but we're going to be there tomorrow. Scott, you're going to be working in the Tacticam booth.
Yes.
And I'm going to be strolling around, probably buying a lot of things, but also interviewing a few different vendors there. Hopefully find some pretty new and updated products.
Right.
And then hopefully get some video to show you guys. So
yeah, we're going to continue to do as many live shows as possible.
Sure.
But we wanted to make sure that we had one here for you guys this Sunday. And in the future, we're gonna try to do as many lives as possible.
Right.
But again, if you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, certainly feel free to share that. If you have something, a particular topic you want us to talk about, share that with us as well. Right. So we're going to break this episode into two segments here.
Yeah.
And in this first segment, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming season because, Chris, it's August.
I know. However, it's a cool start to August. The last week of July was hot, humid, real sweaty kind of thing, and now I actually put the heater on in my car on the way to work this morning.
Yeah.
So, that got my thought process going a little more into, I don't care about football season, it's hunting season.
Yeah, it's hunting season for sure. It's coming up here really quick. We're less than 45 days away from the archery opener here in Wisconsin. I don't know what it is for where you guys are at, but here in Wisconsin, September 14th, and that's coming up really quick here. So, yeah, definitely it's time to switch gears if you're not already in that mode. And I know most of us, we think about deer hunting 365 days a year, but as it gets closer, it really ramps up here.
Right.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about, getting ready for that upcoming season and what's all involved. So one of the big things is making sure your equipment's ready, whether it be a bow or a crossbow. Yeah. Chris, what are you doing?
Well, I do a lot of practicing shooting throughout the year. So I fling a lot of arrows out of my crossbow through 3D target ranges kind of thing.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of arrows. So continually doing that, checking my equipment, replacing batteries, trail cams, making sure my clothes fit because I tend to gain a little weight or a lot of weight. So I got to make sure all that stuff. In fact, I might want to check it tonight before I go to Deer Fest tomorrow because I may be buying some some extension belts or something. But yeah, just going through all my equipment, make sure it's ready to go. Bolts, screws tightened, scope is on correctly.
Sure.
Arrows, I check my arrows. A lot of times I shoot carbon arrows, so make sure they're not splintered, damaged. The fletching is glued on.
Do you like to reuse a lot of arrows, or do you get new arrows every year?
I reuse them, but mine are they're not a box store. Buy them off the shelf.
Sure.
Mine are what they call spine index, so that means they've been turned. They found the stiffness part of the back of the arrow.
Yeah.
So it's always in the same spot. So they shoot more true. They cost a little more up front, but I find not only shooting 3D targets on a 3D range, but when you're trying to sight in your scope, you're on. Not that one arrow out of the from the box store off the shelf is going to go this way and that way, and you're adjusting your scope up and down. It's a little more peace of mind. But for the most part, that's what I'm doing. Tightening bolts, making sure that all my broadheads are sharpened, ready to go. And
Yeah, you mentioned tightening bolts, and that
You had an episode last year, didn't you?
I did. I did have an episode last year.
Why don't you tell us about that, Scott?
So last year I was on a morning hunt. It was supposed to be an all-day hunt, but I was hunting in the morning, and I had a doe about 35 yards away, so not like super far,
Right.
By any means. And I missed clean over her back. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was it was unreal. I had to keep going back and watching the footage, and I was like, I can't believe, because it felt like everything was on. I mean, I was right there, and I left the woods shortly thereafter. It was getting to be close to lunchtime and that anyways. And I'm like, I got to check out what's going on here with my crossbow. And I shot my crossbow at the target, and I was so far off. But everything felt tight.
It wasn't buck fever, huh?
No, and it was a doe. It was a doe. But everything felt tight. My scope felt tight. But as it turns out, when I put my Allen wrench on it, it was significant. Yeah, it was significantly loose. So it's important to remember to not just prepare before the season and make sure your equipment's tuned up and ready to go, but to do that throughout the season as well, I think is extremely important.
Oh, definitely.
You're taking whether it be your bow, your crossbow, whatever it is, even during rifle season too. If you're hunting, all 9 days, that gun is going in and out of cases, in and out of trucks, in the cabin, back in your house, whatever the case is, and it's going to get bumped around. And sometimes it doesn't take much. So make sure your stuff is constantly tuned. You're practicing throughout the year.
Even in a hard case, it can get bounced around.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, granted, they give you a little more protection, but you always have to, do your best to make sure that all your equipment's in top-notch order.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the other things I do, though, Scott, is now that I felt the coolness. I know it's August, going to get hot again, but I will go and start shooting with my actual hunting gear, the jacket I'm going to wear in fall, and hopefully I don't have to hunt the late season, but I'll put on that thicker jacket as well.
Sure.
I don't want to do where I'm going to sweat it up and get all my gear, stinky, Yes, I'm going to clean it and make it ready, but I want to also just make sure that I can move, it bends, it fits right. Layering a lot of times, especially if you're either losing weight or putting on weight, you have that same jacket, your favorite jacket or, a special jacket. How are those layers going to feel underneath? So
yeah.
I don't know about anybody else out there, but I have probably 6 different bins of hunting clothes.
Oh, yeah.
I'll keep my rubber boots in one and, maybe pack boots in another. My gun hunting clothes go in one. My early season archery, mid-season archery,
Yep.
and then a further one, another one I will have empty, and I'll pull them out. So for that season or what I'm wearing that week or month or whatever, I have a fresh bin to put my clothes in. I don't wear them out to the stand. I'll pretty much go out shorts or something, get dressed out in the woods or at my vehicle. Excuse me, and then I will. Once I'm done hunting, even if it's cold and I want to go and whatever, I have that discipline where I want to take those clothes off, put them in it's the one in the bins that clip, the seal.
Yeah, sure.
And then I usually either have pine boughs or something that's going to make me smell like my environment.
Yeah.
But I start doing all that stuff now. I'm making sure I have my fanny pack set up so I have my knives in there. And my fanny pack has 2, 4, a big zip in the middle and a couple pockets.
Right.
So I make sure I have a flashlight, a small enough one. I try to limit the weight of everything I have. So a rope to haul my gear up, and so it's not knotted. I'll straighten it out. Is it long enough? Is it frayed? Make sure, depending on where you live, our licensing has changed, but to make sure I have my Go Wild card, ready to go. What else is there? If I'm going to take snacks or something, I take them out of the crunchy bag, put them in a Ziploc,
Yeah.
I just make sure everything's ready. So in the dark, when I get up in my stand, just by feel, I know where whatever I'm looking for is.
Right.
Hats, gloves, finding all matching gloves.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the, the big prep things I do. Instead of waiting till the day before, the week before, you go to the box store to buy it and they're out because everybody else is doing that. So
yeah, absolutely. I know, like for me, I do the bin thing as well, but I use a lot of ozone eliminating things.
Yep.
I've got different ozone units that I use, which is really nice. You don't have to constantly be washing your clothes all the
Right.
time. That ozone, these ozone emitting devices are just, they're game changers. I like to use them in my vehicles to cut down on the smell. You know, if you had some fast food or something like that, your vehicle's not smelling like French fries and that. But I will put those. I've got little portable ones that I put in my bins, and then I also have a cedar closet at home too, where I keep all my camo and all my gear in that, and I have those going in there as well. So, but I do that too. I do the cedar boughs, the pine boughs, and that. Cut those off, and I'll stick those in with my boots for sure.
some guys use those earth-scented dryer sheets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've never been a big fan of those. I have used them years ago, but to me, it has a bit of a synthetic smell to it.
It does.
And the deer.
It does smell like dirt, but.
Right, it does smell like dirt. In fact, my father it used to drive him crazy when I would wash his gun hunting stuff and that, and I would use those dryer sheets. He could not stand the smell of that.
Sort of on a side note there, washing your clothes. Now, do you do any special regimen?
Well, I wear only scent lock gear.
I do too.
I've just been a scent lock guy for years now, and so with scent lock, you don't have to constantly wash your stuff.
Right.
You can reactivate your scent lock gear by throwing it in the dryer.
Right.
Obviously, if I just field dress a deer and you got the blood and that on there, you got to wash it. Yeah, and I will use a scent eliminating detergent. And I like to air dry my stuff outside if possible. You know, if the weather's permitting. Not that you take it outside and it's an icicle.
Or your neighbor's burning brush.
Right, or that too.
But one of the things I've been doing for the last few years is even my underclothes, my T-shirt, my long johns, whatever I wear, I'll run the washer like a few cycles with baking soda or something eliminating, because you're
to get rid of
normally
anything
using
else
your
that's
other
in there. Sure,
detergents.
yeah.
And then I do have those earth-scented dryer sheets because there again, you're using your regular, I don't know, something that smells like a mountain river, whatever that is, that, try to get those smells out.
Right.
And, just cycling those through a few times. And then, I use scent lock as well.
Well, I'll say this, though. In my house, our household's a little on the crunchy side. If you guys understand that terminology, a little granola. We don't, all of our laundry detergent, we don't use dryer sheets. We're a pretty chemical-free household, thanks to my wife. She's really helped transition our household over to that. So I don't have to necessarily do that, but I definitely understand, if you're using Tide detergent or you're using Bounce dryer sheets and that, you definitely want to make sure that scent is eliminated before you throw your clothes in there for sure.
And one of the things, never thought about it before till one of my friends brought this up, is one of our other friends that we hunted with he was so scent conscious with his clothes and everything else. And, like you with the ozone products. And then he would take a shower, use whatever flower smelly soap.
Oh, no.
and then he would dry himself off with a towel that just went in Downy or something.
Sure.
You've just totally, gone against everything.
Counterproductive.
So if you're going to do it all the way kind of thing, I guess is my point with that.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it was something I really never thought of. You grab a towel that you put in there, but you're wasting all that time.
Yeah. No, I've got special towels that I wash with all the rest of my hunting stuff too.
Until then, I think I might have been guilty of it as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of you have as well. But yeah, I mean, those are the little things because that's when it comes to mature whitetails.
Yeah.
If you want to be successful out there, yes, work using the wind to your advantage. All those things play into it, but you want to try to do anything and everything you can obviously,
Right.
to try to outsmart those mature white-tailed noses.
Yeah, honestly, I've seriously seen a large increase of deer around me in the same area. So it's not like I'm going to a different area, but just by changing what I do.
Yeah.
Scent conscious, I guess, through the shower, through my clothes, the bins.
Well, you had said before too how you don't really like to wear your clothes out to the stand,
Right.
And that's a good point as well, because
I drive that same vehicle to work, and I work a lot with powders and oils.
Yeah.
And even though I don't get that dirty and I wash my hands at work, on your clothes, it gets on the fabric of your
Sure.
seat, whether it's leather or not,
Yep. But even walking out to your stand, getting sweated up, building up that heat, walking out, and it could be late season, and it happens. Depending upon how far you're going out to your
Right.
stand, you can really build up a sweat. So I like to do a lot of layering.
Yeah.
And I go out pretty bare minimum.
Yep.
Till I get to my stand or up into my stand, and then I start putting those other
Sure.
layers on. Is it convenient? No, but I'll tell you, not only for scent control, but just being able to stay out there for an all-day sit.
Definitely.
So that you're not, that you're getting all sweated up and then that stuff freezing.
It's freezing. It makes you cold. You're miserable.
Right. And you're not going to be able to sit that long.
And even if I would leave my jacket on and open, it still isn't enough. I'm a fat boy, so I sweat pretty easy, and you're trying to be quiet. And if you're hauling a tree stand, the weight, picking up your feet and trying not to make noise.
Right. Or trudging through snow too. I
Right.
mean, that alone, that'll generate
Your legs
some
get
serious heat.
tired, and so you're going to start warming up really quickly.
Yeah. So all that stuff goes into play. But I guess, a little bit back to getting ready for the season, outside of making sure your bow, crossbow, and all those types of things are tuned up and ready to go. Is there anything else that you're doing? I know, like, I've got trail cameras out there that I will start putting up during turkey season already.
Sure.
And then I'll check batteries and SD cards in June, put up the rest of my cameras. But then I kind of like to leave things alone until mid-August. I try to stay away. What are you doing with trail cameras?
Well, I do it a little different. I hunt public, so I don't trust my cameras out there for too long.
Sure.
So I am the 2-weeker kind of guy.
Okay.
Plus, I am still excited. I'm not going to lie. I like to see what's going on. You hunt private for the most part, and so you don't have a lot of outside influence, meaning you don't have, you shouldn't have trespassers or other people, where I want to see not only what deer are there, but what people are using it. If I don't hunt along a trail. I'm in the woods. So if there are people coming through, I want to see where they're coming through. Are they just, somebody on a nature hike and out in the middle of nowhere? It would be strange. So usually they're hunters or some, trappers kind of thing. So if so, who is it? Have I seen this person before? What direction they're coming from?
Just wanting to know who else is using
Right.
that area on a regular basis.
And if I see them doing something dumb in the area, I'm probably not going to hunt that area. I'll pull my camera, kind of thing. And I want to continually move my cameras where I either start finding the deer I want, something I want to go after, depending on the season as well. Early season, I always take a doe. I'm not shy of that. I'm a meat hunter. I always take a doe. If there's a permit for another doe, I'll take 2. But for the most part, I like to hold out for the buck. Sad to say, my last pack of venison sticks is in my fridge.
Well,
I know. So,
yeah.
I had 3 full deer last year, and it's just gone this week. So.
Yeah, it goes quick. With your trail cameras on public land, do you do anything differently
I have to cable them.
Okay, you cable them. What about placement?
So what I do is most people put their trail cam at, I don't know, chest height maybe or lower. What I started doing is, because my cameras did get stolen quite often, is I'll put my camera, I'll grab a stump or something, or sometimes when I'm placing them, I'll take one climbing stick, and just to get myself up into a tree a little better or higher, and I'll place that camera facing down a little bit.
Sure.
And that way it's out of the eye level of a normal guy just walking around, even a hunter, because most hunters, they're looking for sign and rubs and scrapes on the ground. Here, they're not really looking up there. So that, and since I've started doing that, I don't believe I've lost one to theft. So,
well, that's good.
and not only that, I don't think the deer look up as much.
Sure.
Even though they say they're blackouts and all those things, you still see the deer staring at them.
All the time. You get pictures of them coming right up to them.
Right, and sniffing them. And
sure.
So I don't know if, when I put my cameras up as well, I wear rubber gloves. When I put the SD card, all that stuff, and I'm wiping them down to get my scent off them as much as possible.
Right, but you're still leaving some scent behind. There's just no getting around
always.
it.
Even the smell of the rubber glove, maybe,
right,
I don't know.
Exactly.
But then as well, so I'll tilt it down, I'll put a stick behind it to get the angle I want. But even so, I don't know if the deer sometimes, when they're at this level, are they hearing it? I don't know if there's a noise associated with it that I
think with some, with some there might be. I mean, again, it goes to the quality of the camera.
Sure.
And like you said, hunting on public land.
I don't usually put up high-priced cameras because I'm trying to just see what kind of deer there, size, date, direction, how many, the fawn crop, so I'll be
you're not trying to get a high quality, amazing quality photo or anything.
I'd like them,
sure,
but I can't afford to keep replacing cameras. I bet you over the years, right now, I have about, I want to say 12 to 13 cameras. Most of them are maybe $100, $120, but nothing
That's
like
enough,
the $250 to $400, kind of cameras. I just can't afford to not only put batteries in them and lose them, but lose them just the same. So
right, like you said, you cable them, but that's sometimes that's not going to be enough to actually stop somebody.
I have my camera here, and one of the things, if you're going to start looking at cameras, is how you can get a lock or a cable through.
Yeah.
Just because I bought a couple cameras, they were a great price, but the hole they had was for one of those mini locks that you'd put on a kid's...
On a suitcase or something.
Lock.
Yeah.
So I tried drilling it out and wound up cracking it. And so, it was a great deal. And it took some decent pictures, actually. But the whole housing was junk. So,
sure.
And one of the other things, so when I talk about locking or cabling, I just use a bike lock. It's a cable. And they call it the Python. So... you open it with the key, and it slides in one way, and it really locks. It's pretty tough to open if you don't have the key. Somebody's always going to be able to cut it if they go out with the bolt cutters, or if they want to wreck their knife. Somebody's willing to...
yeah, that's just the nature of it, is if somebody wants to steal something, they're going to do it, and that's unfortunate. But, I guess that goes to, some of the differences between... public land and private land, and that kind of segues into our next segment that we want to talk about here. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go ahead and start up with segment number 2 of our show here. So we'll be back in just a few seconds. Okay, guys, welcome back to segment 2 of our show here. In our last segment, we were talking a little bit about trail cameras there, and mostly we were talking about getting ready for the upcoming season here.
Right.
So, but talking about the trail cameras, you were talking a little bit how you place them on public land and how you have to utilize them. I hunt private land primarily. I do hunt some public land. But for the most part, I've got a couple leases in central Wisconsin. So for me, I'm putting trail cameras out, during turkey season. And then again, I'm adding some more in mid to late June. And then I don't really spend too much time out on the property.
Right.
For me, it's about leaving things a little bit calm and quiet, kind of like a sanctuary for the deer.
Sure.
some of the surrounding properties, the neighboring properties, there's not a lot of activity out there. So I feel like it's kind of important to try to simulate that on the properties that I have as well.
Sure.
So that we don't have the same, so that we can kind of keep it the same.
Right.
If I got a bunch of activity going out on my leases, it's just going to push those deer, especially
Right.
the mature ones, onto these other properties where there's not a lot of activity.
Well, and the deer aren't used to it then either.
Exactly. So, I guess talking a little bit about, the differences between how we go about scouting public and private, there's obviously some big differences.
Well, right. I mean, maybe talk a little about, you can cut trails and put up stands and leave them and everything. And public land, now the rules change every year, but on federal land, the national forests and things, you can leave a tree stand up all year.
Although that can change from time to time. So make sure you check your regulation book before you take us.
That's what I was saying, depending
Right.
from year to year. But you can leave a stand up, but for the most part, you're doing it at your own, your own risk.
Right.
Somebody could steal it, like they do cameras. Some people have no shame. So, when you hunt on the other public land, little sections, things like that, that the DNR or the state owns, most of the time you're carrying all your equipment in, and you have to have it down at the end of, what do they say, at the end of each hunting day or whatever.
Sure.
So,
well, wouldn't it be? I mean, hunting public land, obviously, scouting is got to be a lot more difficult. I mean, I know the public land hunting that I usually do, it's more kind of on a whim, or I go with a buddy of mine that primarily hunts public. But it's got to be pretty hard to scout it, because there might be some other guys that are out there scouting too. But we all know for the most part, there's going to be a large percentage of hunters that maybe are scouting right before the season starts, or their scouting is just going out, or they're familiar with this particular area, so they're not scouting. So you're not only scouting or trying to figure out where the deer are and where the deer are going to be, but there's really no way to anticipate the hunters, the other hunters
themselves. When you're looking at a new place, like I've never hunted at this place before, you're right. You don't know, and that's where sometimes the trail cams come in handy if they've gone scouting ahead of time.
Right.
Other than that, it's sort of on a whim. So unless you're willing to really walk in deep in the woods, where a lot of guys won't, just for either amount of time they have, I won't say laziness, but the amount of equipment you got to carry in.
Sure.
Most hunters, or many, will maybe a quarter mile would probably be max or average, I'd say. But if you have more than 1 year, maybe 2 years into hunting a certain parcel, you learn where the hunters park, how many hunters are there, and it's going to change from year to year and season to season and things like that. But yeah, you really don't know, and that's sort of the good and the bad kind of thing. You're not paying. I mean, your taxes pay for it and things like that, but you're not paying for that land.
Right.
But it is somewhat of a crapshoot. You don't right away. You don't know how many deer there are, if somebody's pushing them off or they're going on private. It takes a lot of homework. And I start, one thing I do is I start with Google Maps, the likely places, and I'm looking for something that's a little more secluded. I don't mind the walk in. I think the reward is worth the time and effort. So,
sure.
And I want that solitude.
Are you also utilizing any particular apps, like something like Onyx or anything like that, to get some of those borders between public and private as well? Or?
I do use actually, iHunt.
iHunt, okay.
So it's, to me, all those apps are similar. No offense to anybody that likes one over another. It's just one that works in my phone, actually. But I can, blow it up, put in where, I find either a trail, I'll mark where other people park, where likely stand sites, maybe where I found a shed, things like that.
Sure.
And then that way I have it in my hand. Like we were talking in the previous episode, I don't have big maps I'm carrying around anymore. So
Yeah.
so it's all on my phone.
Yeah, which is much more convenient for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a plus hunting private land is what your boundaries are. Everything's going to be there from
Right.
1 year to the next. There's not a lot of change. Your stands are what your stands are. I know, like over this last season, or this last turkey season, spring turkey season, my buddy Mike and I were successful really early. First set,
What?
first time out.
First 14 minutes into your hunt.
Yeah,
you were done?
both of them were within a half an hour. So
Whatever.
we had several days left,
Right.
and it's like, all right, well, let's get some work done at this time of year out here on the property in terms of moving stands and that.
Right.
And you have that, that those are some of the pluses there for sure.
Sure.
Your stands are where your stands are. You can move them. You don't have to really worry. I know some people have to deal with trespassers. Knock on wood. By us,
Right.
we have never had a trespasser
Right.
on our property, which is, I from what I hear out there, is actually a little bit on the rare side, but.
Right.
And we don't really have any issues with our neighbors too, so
Right.
we're pretty fortunate that way as well. So I mean, there's definitely some pluses there. But like you said, public land, you have a whole bunch of area. There's areas
Right.
that other hunters maybe aren't willing to go into.
Sure.
And you just have a lot more acreage to deal with.
In the southern half of our state, because you have our bigger cities, Madison, Waukesha, Milwaukee, Racine, people aren't going to travel as far. A lot of them, I'll say.
Yeah.
So they're going to hunt the southern state forest or, the public land for the most part if they can't get away. And then the further north you go, you still have all the national, the Nicolet and stuff like that. Even going over into the UP, I think it's the Hiawatha. I'm not sure they have their state forest, but there's less folks that actually go into the big woods. It's still public.
Yeah.
You get mostly, I'd say, locals kind of thing.
Sure.
For the most part, I'd say it's, on the southern half of the state, it's probably, people don't come from the north to hunt south. We tend to go south, to hunt north kind
Yeah.
of thing. There are more deer density down here. There's more deer density. However, bigger deer.
A little less land too, though.
A lot less land, yeah. And everybody's using it.
Right.
So it's about hunting smart. Sometimes you want to use the other hunters to your advantage if you know where they're going to be. Gun season, for example, in a more populated area where there's more hunters, most of them, they'll see some thickets and a little water and, I'm not going to go into that swamp. And you walk 30, 40 yards in that swamp, there's dry like islands. And the deer, once the shooting starts or the car doors start slamming, the deer head for that the swamp, and they'll just pretty much go up and down a corridor. And that's been one of my tickets to success for quite a few years. Is I'm not afraid to go in there. Pair of knee boots and my tree stand, and I'm good.
Sure.
So
those are the kinds of things that you're looking for, like when
Yep.
you're using the maps and that.
not only, and that doesn't really show up on those maps so much.
Well, it would be more of a topo map.
Right, and even so, even swampy, sometimes a little rise won't show up. It depends on, what do they call it, the relief, or, every
yeah.
5 feet, it may not be 5 feet, so it wouldn't
Right.
show up. Boots on the ground or in the swamp, I guess, you really got to walk through and, just be prepared. Sometimes that swamp water, muck, suck your boots off kind of mud.
Yeah.
So, but go exploring. I always, if there's a creek, I love creeks and little rivers. Deer seem to love to cross them. So I'll walk up and down the creek on one side or the other, and you can always see, the sides of the creek all rutted up with tracks and where they slipped and jumped across. Those
Yeah.
are main highways.
Sure.
So I like looking for those, and then those are usually like doe highways when you see a bunch of
Yeah.
tracks and things. But during the rut, the does are where the bucks are going to be, following them. So I marked that on my map. And like I said, it depends on if I go out one day and I see there's vehicles in that area, I always have a backup plan. Because not only do I want to not wreck another guy's hunt, he doesn't know I'm there, or if he did, either way, I don't want to wreck mine.
Right.
So I have a backup plan, and it's always dependent on wind direction, how much time I have, if I'm, do I have all day, or do I only have a few hours? Okay, what is my backup plan? And I actually have those things written out. So I know it's corny to some, but I don't want to have to try to remember, oh yeah, that spot. It's right in the maps. And I have like a little area for notes, how far in, or what I saw there, best wind direction. And actually, you have the GPS location of the individual tree, or, excuse me, tree line that you want to be in. So that comes in handy as well.
Sure.
So with on private land, though, you always know what your area is going to look like, unless you have a tornado.
Well, yes, yes, to an extent, but the scouting is still going to change from year to year, because you're going to deal with changing crop fields. What the neighboring farms are, what the farmers are planting, and for the last few years we had corn all around us, and that was pretty consistent there. And now this year it's going to be all alfalfa. So the deer are going to completely pattern different than they have the last several years. For the last several years, or especially last year, I had it down to, pretty narrowed down to exactly when and where these deer were going to be coming out of the swamp and that, and going to the field. Wind obviously, played a major factor there, but they were somewhat predictable. I wasn't successful on a mature buck, but I still had a pretty good idea where these deer were moving. Now this year it's going to be a different story again. This farmer on the east side of the property might have this, and the farmer on the west side of the property, or the north side, or whatever. All these things play into it. So you still have to go out there and scout. Right. You got to put the trail cameras up, and you got to, And some of it's also trial and error too. We have a fair amount of stands on our property, so that regardless of wind, weather, whatever the case may be, just the changing deer patterns throughout the year too. You can make those adjustments on the fly without necessarily having to hang a new set. We will do that from time to time, and I know I do, and that just kind of it's very circumstantial. But
now on public, there's several things. Being state owned, somebody may build a house. Buy a couple acres. Yeah. Now there's somebody living out in that area, or they sell the lumber off. So, and I had that happen. I had my favorite tree, and hunted out of it for a couple of years, and then you go back and they've thinned out the woods, because it got too thick, and the undergrowth, the sun wasn't getting through. So they thinned it out. You go back and it's a whole new world. Yeah. Especially in the Northwoods, a lot of the public land for timber company land, they'll let you hunt it as long as you respect it and don't damage the trees. Yeah. But you go back, or if you don't have time to get up there ahead of time, and you go up and there's a whole 200-300 yards wide by a quarter mile long just gone. Yeah. And while it may seem devastating, sometimes those kinds of things are actually good.
It can be beneficial, sure.
It lets the light in, creates another edge effect, where now plants are going to be popping up. We just had some tornadoes or heavy winds come through the northern part of the state. Yeah, several. A few weeks ago. Several, yeah. And now I've seen a lot of videos and pictures of entire areas just bent over and knocked down. And while it's devastating and people lost their homes and things like that, in the respect of deer hunting, though, that created now a sanctuary. They're going to go in, all the new growth will start popping up, and the deer and the animals start feeding off that. And, And so those things change a lot on public, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
We don't know from year to year.
I want to say it was well over 15 years ago, but we did have a tornado come through by us as well, and it actually really changed the landscape in that. And over the last 15 years, that particular area that kind of got wiped out now is really thick with undergrowth.
Right.
You know, where it was just solid oaks in that before. Now we have this undergrowth, and it's kind of down in the bottom of a valley, and you know, it's this great. I mean, if you look in there, it's just deer trail after deer trail. There's zigzagging all over the place.
It may stink for you to walk through, but the deer love it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's you know, so those are things that change, and that's Mother Nature.
Right.
So, but you know, I guess what else would you say is one of the bigger things that you're doing to prepare for the upcoming season, and regardless of public or private, what is there anything else that you're really you know, how about physically? You know, are you?
Well, I work a lot at work, so I'm not a workout guy, but I walk my dog every day.
Yeah, you do.
So if you guys see any posts, I try to shoot some video almost every day. A lot of it doesn't really turn out. But I do see deer almost every day. So a good mile there. I bet you I put on 10 miles at work, walking back and forth. But riding a bike, I mean, you know, I try to. I'm not, you know.
It's not real, I guess, really scouting, but it's preparing for the season.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes.
The hills.
Right, because if you're not used to doing that all year round, if you're not on your feet, if you're not an active person,
right.
I think that stuff is actually really important, especially as we get older. You know, the increased chances for heart attacks and different things like that, you know, all come into play. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're physically ready for the season as well, not just mentally and equipment-wise and that, but that we're physically ready to, you know, to take on, because
haul your gear, haul a deer, you know.
Yeah, all that stuff.
In fact, I'm not in shape, but I'm not out of shape. Last year, in fact, I shot a doe, and I had her in my cart. You know, you put them on the cart with the wheels, and just pulling that back, I had to stop. It felt, what was she, maybe 120 pounds? She was a nice-sized doe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just pulling her back, I had to stop every couple hundred yards. It's really, am I getting that old? Or I didn't have anything to do, so it's fine. You know, I wasn't in a hurry. But, you know, little by little, you feel out of shape. And last year, I didn't do a lot of walking or anything, so that's why I'm making more of a point of it this year.
Yeah. A few years ago, I went on a trip to hunting trip, a DIY hunt to Southeast Ohio. And you're kind of on the edge of the Appalachian Mountains in that area there. It's very hilly. Yeah. Much more hilly than what we're even used to here in Wisconsin, where we have lots of kettles and hills and that. So I physically prepared myself. You know, this wasn't like going out west on an elk hunt or anything like that, where I had to really deal with elevation. But I knew I was going to be going up and down some really steep hills. Especially on a DIY, where you're backpacking in, doing a lot of scouting on the fly. So I trained that entire summer. And it would be simple things like carry a backpack, you know, with a bunch of gear in that while I'm mowing the lawn. Right. You know, you can really put on, you know, depending on the size of your yard.
You weren't on a rider, were you?
No, I was push. It was a push mower, so not self-propelled either. But you know, it's those kinds of things that I think are important to kind of make sure that you are ready physically for the season. I mean, it happens. People, we lose people every year, you know, to heart attacks and different things like that. You know,
that's a good point. I do carry my backpack with me. Scouting, you know, if you have a bunch of cameras that you're putting out, those start weighing down and things like that.
The batteries,
yes, the batteries.
It adds up quick for sure.
But yeah, that's one thing, wearing heavier, well, I do wear boots and they're somewhat heavy, but yeah, just picking your legs up, practice picking your legs up like it's snow or you're trying not to crunch leaves.
Tall grass.
Tall grass. Because I think, honestly, my legs and my hips are what tire out the fastest and the most. Yeah. You know, my upper torso and all that's fine. It's my legs and hips that really, you know, as you get older.
Yeah.
So
it happens. So,
right.
well, I for this segment here, I think we pretty much covered things. If you guys have comments or questions or anything, anything you guys want to talk about,
Sure.
Feel free to share that with us. What else you got, Chris?
Nothing. Just that sooner, in a few more episodes, we plan to transition over to our other Facebook page.
Yeah, we're going to transition over to the Midwest Racks and Rods outdoor page. Currently, right now, we're sharing these episodes on our community page.
Right.
And we will for the next couple, but we're going to eventually transition it over to the Midwest Racks and Rods outdoor page. So make sure you guys give us a like over there and follow us over there if you want to continue watching these episodes
Right.
and
Spread the word.
see our content that we're going to have
Right.
for this upcoming fall and throughout the rest of the summer. And that we're going to be sharing a lot more stuff over there, some
Right.
of the fishing trips and things like that, as well as maybe some of the interviews from this weekend here at Deer Fest. So.
Right. And also on our community page, we encourage you guys to share your photos, what you're doing in the outdoors, whether it's camping, canoeing, birds, something you find interesting. As long as it's part of the outdoors, doing something with family, friends, share it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we want to see.
Share that on our page. And also check us out on Instagram too at Midwest RR Outdoors. That is our Instagram page. And we would love to have you follow us over there as well. Our YouTube page is just getting started. We're going to be sharing a lot of our videos in that as well
Right.
over on YouTube. And I think we'll probably be sharing these shows over there at some point as
Right.
well.
I think when we get enough of them.
Right. We'll start a playlist over there. So,
Sure.
But we're gonna cut this one a little bit short here for
Sure.
this week because we got Deer Fest going on this weekend, and stay tuned because in 2 weeks we'll have another episode and we're gonna
Right.
do that one live. And again, we invite you guys to hop on and interact with us, ask us questions, share your comments,
Yep.
whatever you got for us.
I'd like to thank all of our followers and welcome all the new people that have joined us in the last couple months that we didn't get a chance to thank so far.
Yeah.
So welcome and hope you enjoy.
All right. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching Midwest Racks and Rods Outdoor Show. Again, I'm Scott Biskobing, and this is...
Chris Damali.
All right.
See ya.